YouTube, thanks for stopping by. If you're new, hello and welcome. If you've been by before, welcome back. Not even 30 minutes ago, as of the time I'm writing this video, I just watched the Season 3 finale of Chucky, and man, am I still pumped, with quite a lot to say. So let's dive right in. Keep in mind that, of course, there will be spoilers for Chucky. I'm going to start by building off of what I went over in my previous review, which firstly was dynamic plot. Like I mentioned before, this time around they seem to focus on writing the show's characters that aren't Chucky, which brings us back to that Bride of Chucky kind of storytelling. And this paid off extremely well, because the amount of characters that there are to be excited about, concerned for, scared of, etc., is at its highest. And there's always something going on that glues the viewers to the screens, because we don't just care about Chucky and the main trio, but also President Collins, Grant, Henry, Caroline, Tiffany, the list goes on. There is a downside to this, and I say this as a writer who's currently experiencing this in the creative process. Introducing more characters and giving each of them their own separate journey does make it harder to keep the focus on the main characters. It wasn't until Season 3, Episode 7 when I actually realized I forgot that Jake is essentially the found guy of this show, the one the show was meant to be about, the one who was based on Chucky's creator, Don Mancini, as a child. But when they finally brought it back home to him, it was done tremendously. Seeing him forgive his father and how that was what pacified Lucas was very refreshing. I think that's all the completing the circle Jake really needed. However, I'm not going to absolve the writers completely by blaming the lack of focus on Jake entirely on the amount of characters they had to focus on, because if I'm being honest, they had plenty of opportunity to flesh out he and Devin's characters further, but they wasted it on sex scenes between them both. They had zero development for either character. And that's one of my minor complaints for this season, and I feel like they made those characters more about their sexual identity than their personalities and what they've gone through. They could have easily taken notes from what they had going on for Lexi and Grant. Speaking of which, I feel like they could have taken that farther. And they even could have ended it a bit better. There was a line in Season 2, Episode 1, revealing that Lexi is still a virgin and that her first time should be special. I was expecting Grant to be that person for her. I thought that's where they were going with it. And it was going good. The only thing I didn't like was that Lexi was kind of wishy-washy about Grant. She went from clearly using him to kind of liking him, but then when she let him down, she reduced him to some teenage boy that she could easily overcome the emotions of, which felt kind of like she still wasn't treating him fairly, like a person. But I am glad that they were at least able to get back on the same page. Their final kiss in the burning White House was solid. When they saw him reuniting with his family after making it out of the building, I was hoping he and Lexi would embrace, but I guess watching him from afar is good enough. Let's talk about the tone. I honestly feel like this is where it's at for Chucky at this point in time. Now, ideally, if I was in charge, we'd be returning to Curse Style or Child's Play 1, but due to this goofy Chucky that we've been getting, who behaves as if he's Gen Z, taking that and putting him in a serious environment while he does his messing around honestly works. It looks like CZ's role was right. Perhaps Season 1 was inspired by the original trilogy, Season 2 was inspired by Bride and Seed, and Season 3 is inspired by Curse and Cult. Curse being the horror, Cult being the half-humor. I feel like what originally gave us a humorous Chucky was when they introduced Tiffany. Chucky having a companion, someone he knew as a human and was comfortable with, gave him room to express himself more, and I think that's the source of that humor pretty much. Chucky being more expressive and comfortable. However, with the show, what they did was they had him be this goofball right off the bat as soon as he revealed himself to Jake. They even have him make all these pop culture references, use the new age slang terms, and now he freely knows how to use a smartphone. This never made sense because Chucky usually isn't alive and at large long enough to get familiarized with the societal climate as it is now. The only time this has made sense is when he's saying we got the beat, and that's because it was playing in the hospital he was at before then. I think it's ultimately just catering to the young generation rather than the fandom as a whole. But I am willing to settle for that if they can at least continue to give us the scary mood of bride, curse, and cult. My one major complaint is the legacy aspect. This goes back to what I was saying in the review of episodes 1 through 4. I was a bit bummed by Andy's quote unquote appearance. I feel like it was misleading. The way they used it in the trailer to promote a certain kind of story, when really this was all just a one scene thing and it was a dream. Therefore, we didn't actually see any Andy, and since we don't have Andy, we have no legacy characters at all. My hope was that they'd fill in the gap of Kyle by bringing back Andy along with one other legacy character like Tyler or Kristen De Silva, or better yet, leave the Andy pairing out and bring back two new returning characters altogether, like Karen and Mike, Jesse and Jade. There are so many possibilities, and the opportunity the show has given the creators to continue to tell all aspects of the franchise's story is a blessing in disguise. I have a really big thing for Legacy. Being able to go back to the beginning is a treat. I'm not a Ghostbusters fan. I don't think I've seen any of the movies, but when I saw all the returning characters in Frozen Empire, including the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, that made me want to see it, because it meant the movie was honoring a legacy behind it, rather than just being a movie on its own or a cash grab sequel. Chucky should be doing this. Season 1 was right to bring back Andy and Kyle for the first season, and then to finish their story in the second. But for the third, they should have taken advantage of all the creative liberties doing that gave them. I held out hope all the way until the last episode that we'd get someone we haven't seen before in a long time. And unfortunately, the closest thing to that is John Waters, returning as the creator of the Good Guy Doll. And I'll take it. I love John Waters, especially his run in Law & Order SVU. As for my more minor complaints, I'll start from biggest to smallest. The main minor complaint that is nearly a major complaint, we'll call it a mid-complaint, is that Miss Fairchild never came back. Now, they didn't do any type of closure on her character that gave us an answer as to what's truly left of her story, other than when they showed her death from the spirit realm, which I guess kind of confirms her death. I don't think that would have happened if she wasn't actually killed. However, that's even worse. There was so much talk about Miss Fairchild, what the possibilities were, and how her hair color was intentional, implying a relation to Chucky. But then they bring her back to kill her off? That's like totally disrespectful. That was a fan favorite character. Now for an actual minor complaint. I feel like earlier on the kills were too goofy. It's as if Chucky was giving us a light show that's meant to make us laugh. I think they should stick to kills that are graphically creative but also still serious, like Teddy's kill or the blood drowning. Or they can also keep it simply yet suspenseful, like the deaths of Timmy and Miss Fairchild. My next minor complaint would have to be Jake's plan. It made sense to me until it didn't. They were going to cater to Chucky's good side, and I thought that would be the perfect solution to ending the conflict once and for all. So he hands good Chucky a knife so that he can sacrifice himself. But they established earlier on, as soon as Jake met Chucky Prime in the spirit realm, that Chucky can't be killed there because he's already dead. They both even stab each other to prove it. So what was that knife supposed to do for good Chucky? I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and just go with the knife actually being symbolism for good Chucky cutting ties to the realm, and therefore disbanding his deal with Damballa. But I doubt it. I'm sure most of us know how Mancini is with writing. Last minor complaint, as mentioned earlier, Jake and Devin felt too lustful. I'm not very connected to either of them. The only one I like is Lexi, and I already like Caroline more than her. It's like, what are we getting from those two characters besides a one-dimensional romance and a bunch of gay sex scenes? Lexi, on the other hand, actually has an active story to tell about herself and her sister, and that's what makes her interesting. So if Chucky gets renewed for a fourth season, I'd like for the writers to actually do something with Jake and Devin other than focus on the fact that they lust for each other. But going back to the full circle, They didn't just do that with Jake and Luke, they also did it with Jake and Chucky, and that was splendid. However, it shouldn't take the whole season to get there. Again, Exhibit A, Lexi and Grant, start to finish. In the previous review I did a segment on what I loved most about the premiere. In this one, I'm going to do one on what I love most about the finale. I feel like there are finally stakes. I feel like the main characters are always destined to win, while Chucky at least half loses. There's almost never a Chucky wins completely scenario, except for this time. The entire season, I've been rooting for one of the main trio members to die, while having a hard time deciding who should it be. So who do you guys think should be? Let me know in the comments below. Because to be completely honest, I don't feel anything special for these main characters. I like Grant more than I like Devin. One's been in 8 episodes, the other's been in over 20, respectively. Again, that's because they aren't fleshed out. They haven't had any actual personal story since season 1. Lexi, on the other hand, has always had a struggle, and she started out insufferable. She's come so far that I can barely remember how much I hated her. But in this finale, they all lost, while Chucky and Tiffany both won completely. In fact, let's take a few minutes to appreciate the amazing Jennifer Tilly, both the actress and the character. Hats off to a not so bad character arc. It looks like they finally put the Jennifer Tilly story to rest, which I think it's finally time to do, and the way they did it was one of the best things about this episode. I rooted incredibly hard for her during her escape, and literally screamed yes when the sniper was finally taken care of. I don't know how she got from Austin, Texas to DC that fast, but hey, Chucky hasn't been perfect in a very long time. I knew that death would bring Chucky and Tiffany closer again. I knew that Tiffany facing a death sentence, with Chucky facing, death of old age. I knew them both facing death would be what brings them closer again. It's a good reason to, set differences aside. And I would very much love to see where they go as a couple of dolls again. If Chucky's to get a season 4, I think it'll involve Chucky and Tiffany going to a different country to find Gigi, but with 2 different agendas. Tiffany wants to be reunited with them so they can all be a family again, but I think Chucky still has it out for Gigi. We could potentially be getting a Seed of Chucky rematch. However, I think they should focus on some other characters for the main cast and go back to telling the story of Charles' legacy. But we'll see what ends up happening. But to answer the question as to did the second half of season 3 miss the mark, on the contrary, it was a bullseye. And I really hope Don keeps his notes on this, because if Chucky gets elected for a 4th term, this is what we need to see. In fact, I think it can get even better than this now that Chucky is finally going in the right direction. With that being said, thank you all for watching. Please consider leaving a like, subscribe, and stay tuned for any future Chucky related videos. Feel free to check out my others that are already up. And as a bonus, I have a very juicy Chucky video for you all to watch that is available now on my Patreon. In the meantime, until next time, goodbye.